Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Santa Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Hare Krishna. Continuing our reading of Canto 6 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 18, Diti vows to kill King Indra. with verse 53. Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam. Vaishnavis? Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam Striyo viravatis charchet Shaganda balimandanai Patim charcho patishteta Dhyayet koshta gatam chatam. Thank you very much for chanting, Prabhus. Striyaha, women. Viravatihi, possessing husbands and sons. Cha, and. Archet, she should worship. Shak, with garlands. Gandha, sandalwood. Bali, presentations. Mandanai, and with ornaments. Patim, the husband. Cha, and. Archya, worshipping. Upatishteta, should offer prayers. Dhyayat, should meditate. Koshtagatam, situated in the womb. Cha, also. Tam, upon him. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. With flower garlands, sandalwood pulp, ornaments, and other paraphernalia, a woman following this vow should worship women who have sons and whose husbands are living. The pregnant wife should worship her husband and offer him prayers. She should meditate upon him, thinking that he is situated in her womb. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The child in the womb is a part of the husband's body. Therefore, the husband, through his representative, indirectly remains within the womb of his pregnant wife. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pastita Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatirevyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So this verse continues the list of worshipable people, which was also mentioned in the last verse. You know, if you need a refresher, it's just cows, brahmanas, the goddess of fortune, and the supreme personality of Godhead should be worshipped before breakfast, it says in the last verse. So this continues this list with women who have sons, women whose husbands are living, and the husband can be meditated upon and also worshipped. Of course, in Vedic times, having a son was considered great fortune, and even in some cultures today, it's considered a great fortune. So, the idea here is that someone who has a son, or has sons rather, is someone who has gotten some benediction. The worship of the husband that's mentioned, actually, this is also traditionally the Vedic system. Prabhupada writes many times that one can, both traditionally but also in the modern day, one can have a lot of reverence for their spouse as a conduit to Krishna and to Guru. And that actually the husband, or in some cases he says the wife, also can serve as a guru to the spouse. That person is very accessible, certainly, and can give very practical instructions in someone's life. I mean, depending on, who is, if there's a marriage and one devotee is like a little bit less advanced, or perhaps a lot less advanced than the other, but they both have some sincere interest in progressing on the path of devotional service, then whoever it is that, has not made as much advancement should take instructions from the one who has. There was one couple in Venezuela that were writing to Prabhupada, and their cry was that we don't have enough Brahmins. We don't have enough Brahmins, Srila Prabhupada. Please come back and give some more devotees Brahmin initiation, because we're really struggling on the altar. And in particular, one woman had already taken Brahmin initiation, and her husband had not yet received Brahmin initiation from Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, he sent one Brahmin thread, by carrier, and he told the man to, actually, your wife you should treat like Guru, and she will give you the Gayatri mantra by whispering it in your ear, because, anyways, Prabhupada wasn't able to be there, and he understood that it was kind of an emergent situation. So to take the spouse as, similar to the spiritual master at times is something we have to understand is very important. Well, of course, if you have a spouse. And taking on the commitment of marriage it shouldn't be a very cheap thing. Many people, they just kind of get married. I mean, I'm sure you've heard many people, they drive to Las Vegas to elope, right? And they come back the next day married. It's like they make the decision overnight, and they don't even tell anyone in their family, much less a spiritual master, if they even know what a spiritual master is. So this kind of, hasty changing of ashrams is something that devotees should be very careful about, because in any sort of marriage or partnership or whatever, spiritual life there must be a very strong foundation. And therefore it must be approved, and authorities must be consulted. I mean, these sort of really big life decisions that we make are some of the, most potent reasons why we have a guru. That person is there for guidance, to provide guidance, and that doesn't always, the guru doesn't always manifest themselves in the Diksha guru. There's also Shiksha gurus and other authorities we can consult on important matters. But certainly we should never think ourselves qualified to make such massive, life-changing and irreversible decisions ourselves. These are the kinds of things that, there needs to be a lot of thought, analysis, careful decision-making put into. And the reason that, marriage is so frequently unsuccessful is because, there's not a very strong spiritual understanding of what marriage is for, which is to serve each other and to serve Krishna. When someone begins to think about taking a wife or a husband as someone to enjoy, it becomes very problematic. I mean, you reduce that person, a devotee, you reduce that person to simply an object. If you just think of that person as, someone to satisfy your sense gratification. So that person is someone you should aim to serve in their spiritual life, however you may be able, depending on your capacity. Again, with guidance and lengthy thought put into that. In ISKCON, we're very lucky, actually. We have a group called the Grihastha Vision Team. So those people, they give counseling to people before they get married with another devotee, and they say, okay, so what's your marriage going to be like? And they talk about how to make sure that their relationship is spiritual. It's very thoughtful that these people, have this organization set up to ensure that these relationships don't go awry. Very experienced counselors who can immediately, tell when there's some kind of, issues or doubts they may have. This phrase, parental unit or marriage unit, is used very often, and in the purport, Prabhupada, he certainly hints at this, that the husband and wife are very connected through the child, having the child. He says the husband is, in the wife's womb as the child. But anyways, the husband and wife are very powerfully connected. This idea of having a child with someone is also not something cheap, just like marriage. Prabhupada said that the reason that there is no real kind of varna system in this age is because there are no samskars. People don't perform the garbhodakana samskar. So then, how can you give birth to a brahmana? It's not possible. We don't have Brahmins in Kali Yuga. So, the samskars must be gone through, and then the raising of the child is a commitment for the entire childhood of the child, until the child is ready to move on to the brahmacharya ashram. But before that, there's a lot of responsibility for the two parents to maintain their own relationship and to maintain their relationship with the child. So we understand from this that, marriage is not for everyone. So many people try it, and it's just not something that they're able to really do. Marriage is for some people. Prabhupada said, 25% of our society should be brahmacharis, 25%, etc., right? So he had that aspiration at some time. But marriage isn't for everyone. And again, by consulting spiritual authorities, there can be more clarity about, what ashram is right for someone. In previous ages, people would go through all four ashrams. Men at least would go through all four ashrams. But, we've seen a lot of people actually very successfully stay in the brahmacharya ashram for their whole life. We have one such senior devotee in our presence today. We're very lucky. So, anyways, I mean, it's very important to think about ashram status not as something that it's like you have to do, like it's just the next step. It's not necessarily. Depending on your qualities and your propensity, you may be more suited to stay in the brahmacharya ashram, and that's good. It's a very exalted position. Each of these ashrams are very exalted positions, and it's actually not very helpful for people to kind of compare and contrast ashrams like in terms of worth. I mean, there are grihastas who are doing very nice service, and there are doing brahmacharis who are doing also very, very nice service, and vanaprasthas who are doing very nice service. So we should never think to, denigrate or disrespect anyone in some, other ashram as us just because we think that we're well situated in our ashram. Because that may be well true, that you're very well situated in your ashram. But it doesn't really give you license to, offer commentary on someone else's ashram status unless that's your job, Anyways, throughout this ashram system, even if you enter the Grihastha ashram, the idea is that over time we become more and more detached from our family, including our parents, our spouse, our kids, anyone else like that. Vanaprastha is typically taken at age 50, at the latest. Prabhupada says at the latest, age 50. And then, many people say, well, in this modern time we're so degraded, so maybe we can even say 60 or 65 or something. But then when we reach that stage, it means that contact with the children is something which is not very helpful to our spiritual life. Vanaprastha means detachment from your children if you have children. So, and also it means that, you're someone with more wisdom that you have to offer, and so you should preach more. It's very important for senior devotees, vanaprasthas, to preach, because they've experienced a full life in Krishna consciousness. Those of them who have been through the brahmacharya ashram or the grihastha ashram can offer advice to those in those ashrams, having gone through that ashram in its entirety. So they're very valuable resources for us. And as a result, even though, the four ashrams all have their, equal place in society, we can offer, some additional respect to the devotees who are sort of in the vanaprastha stage or the sannyas stage of life, because of the knowledge that they have, not because of some title. Just because someone puts vanachari at the end of their name, it doesn't mean that, anyways. But if that person has done very nice service, and that person has, has a lot of spiritual knowledge, then of course we should honor them. But detachment from family is very hard for many people. It's one of the hardest things, actually. For many devotees who come into the movement and their parents are not themselves devotees, striking a balance in how do I want to relate to my family now is a very difficult thing to do. But it's a balance that must be struck. I mean, we can't compromise on our spiritual life, We can't, just eat meat to please our parents, when we're sharing a table with them. It's ridiculous, right? Our spiritual life has to be our utmost priority, because our relationship with our family is not going to send us back to the spiritual world. Even if your parents are devotees, your relationship with your parents is not what's going to send you back to the spiritual world. Unless perhaps you're Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. So don't imitate. But anyways, even I've seen in devotee families, the child gets initiated and then the parents still call the child by the birth name. There's so much attachment which comes with these family ties, which we have to be very careful about. And we need to try and wean ourselves off it. Which is why, even within each of the ashrams, there are teachings that, there are even stages within each ashram. And it's especially described in sannyas, like there's staying, sort of living very close to the wife, and then she may still cook food for the sannyasi, but they won't live together. And then moving further away, but then still there may be some minimal contact here and there. And then finally, at some stage, there's complete renunciation. So, the idea that this is a gradual process is also something, we understand. I mean, it can't be just immediate false renunciation. That's very unwise. I mean, probably certainly one of the reasons that a lot of people have been unsuccessful in, living a full life in spiritual life has been false renunciation at a very young age. I mean, anyways. So this is something really that we have to consider. And, the Vedic system as it's described in like Dharma Shastras is not something we can necessarily aspire to today. And it's very important to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada's instructions, which have been modified for our condition. There were many times when Srila Prabhupada scolded his disciples for finding something in Shastra to try and contradict his instructions. Like very famously, that brahmachari in Los Angeles, Jai Sachinandana, didn't want to, hear the Govinda Madhipurusham prayers in the morning and wrote to Prabhupada saying that I have found something in Shastra saying that we shouldn't listen to this because Yamuna Prabhu is singing. And Srila Prabhupada said, no. First paragraph, no! Exclamation mark. You have discovered something. But he goes on to explain that actually this is disrespectful, this is Guru Aparad, to go searching for something to contradict the spiritual master's instructions. So Prabhupada revolutionized the ashram system. He introduced the brahmachari ashram to the West, of course, which had never been seen by anyone before in the United States. And he introduced the brahmacharini ashram more or less to the world. He gave facility to people who lived with parents in a very fallen state, and he said, it's okay. You can come stay in my shelter and Krishna's shelter because that will be better for your spiritual life. We have to understand that this is not, Vedic times in India, when people had, everyone, had very nice devotees for parents. So it's very nice, actually, that we have more facility now, in the Western countries for young girls and boys who don't have a very favorable environment for practicing Krishna consciousness at home. I mean, even he himself sort of revolutionized the sannyas ashram. I mean, he organized marriages and things for his disciples, something that wasn't very typical of sannyasis traditionally, but he said, what can I do? I'm the only one here capable of doing it. So Prabhupada was a great scholar of Shastra and very learned in Shastra, but also he was like a wartime commander. He understood that he was up against the material world, especially materialism in the West, which is it's a very grave and serious fight. And so he had to make some, he had to, anyways, run his society in a way that would adapt to those conditions. It's very important to understand. If you don't mind, I'll also read the next verse. And anyways, I have some points on that. Kashyapa Muni continued, if you perform this ceremony called Pumsavana, adhering to the vow with faith for at least 1 year, you will give birth to a son destined to kill Indra. But if there is any discrepancy in the discharge of this vow, the son will be a friend to Indra. So as was discussed yesterday, this vow is sort of meant to be an impossible vow. It's a trick. He's very smart and he knows that, she's not likely to be able to completely fulfill the conditions, that Kashyapa Muni is giving. And even so, she's still very enthusiastic to fulfill the vow. But anyways, I mean, one thing that I considered when I read this verse was that, Prabhupada has given us very easy vows to follow. There's just 5. And actually, only one of them is a positive vow, like to do something, chant 16 rounds. It's the only thing he ordered us to do. And then 4 things he's told us not to do. It's just 5. You can count them on your one hand. So compared to the vows of old, for various benedictions, which were significantly less important than going back home, back to Godhead, easier vows have been given to us. I mean, it's like we're very fortunate. Our goal is something much higher than giving birth to a son who can kill Indra. I mean, we want to go back home, back to Godhead. That's like the best thing ever. And all we have to do is follow 5 vows. And I mean, there are many things that Kashyapa also describes to Diti that are, we can also try to do. I mean, we should wear clean clothing, etc. Of course, it's very important. But at the end of the day, the holy name is so merciful. And if we can just, really seriously take shelter of our chanting, of our sadhana, according to the vows that we make to our spiritual master and Prabhupada, we can go back home, back to Godhead in this lifetime. With just a few adjustments, a few restrictions on behavior. I mean, so many people have told me like 16 rounds, it's so complicated. It's so much work. It's, what do I do? I don't have enough time. So if you have an iPhone, on Sunday morning at 9 a.m., it tells you your average screen time for the week. And if you have a number of screen time that's above 2 hours, then I have news for you. You have plenty of time to chant japa, 16 rounds. Perhaps even more. So it's very easy for us to sort of think that, oh, I have this priority, I have that priority, and this is so important to me, and that is so important to me. But when you have downtime, when there's time in between tasks, and when there's time in between services, and there's whatever, what are you doing? I mean, I know some devotees who, like, just waiting in the prasadam line, all they do is just Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. They don't even have their beads. They've already finished their rounds, but that's all they want to do. They want to chant Hare Krishna. It's a really exalted position to be so surrendered to the holy name and want to take so much shelter of the holy name. And then other people stand in the prasadam line and they're twirling around and they're talking to their friends and, whatever. So if someone is having difficulty chanting their rounds, it requires a lot of self-reflection about what someone is actually capable of. We have to be honest with ourselves. We can't, lie to ourselves about what we're capable of. And we have to say, okay, well, if you're really, really, really being honest and you still can't do it with whatever service you have or whatever distractions you have, then you need to remove those distractions. Because Prabhupada says, japa before service, always, japa is the most important. And even when people, got sick or they were, very tired or whatever, and so many people complained to Prabhupada, we can't do this, Prabhupada, we can't do this. He said, your health and your japa are, your ultimate responsibility, first responsibility. So there's no, you don't forget to eat, so you shouldn't forget to chant. It's really important to prioritize that on our agenda. That's why devotees like to chant so early in the day. In addition to the spiritual benefit it provides by being a very sattvic time of day, for many people, free of many distractions. It's also a declaration by chanting your japa early in the day that this matters to me. My sadhana, my spiritual life, my relationship with Krishna matter more than anything else to me, and so I'm going to chant my rounds first thing. I'm going to bathe, and then I'm going to chant my rounds. Like that. And, you know, if you just go on with that program, I mean, your life is certain to be successful, your spiritual life. Holy name is the most important thing. I mean, I have a very strong interest in deity worship and other things, you know. I mean, there's so many services we can perform, cooking, cleaning, whatever. But it doesn't, you know, that's not meant to replace the holy name. We're in Prabhupada's ISKCON, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, so Harinam Japa is the #1 thing to do. And everything else is secondary. All right, does anyone have any discussion to add? Yes, Dravida Prabhu.
There was a early on in the movement when the books were actually being printed by ISKCON in ISKCON Press. I think it was back in Brooklyn before I got there. So there's this one devotee who was, I don't know if he had experience before, but he was in charge of the press, I mean the actual press machine.
Yes.
And of course BTG was being printed, and then there was some small books, so his service kept expanding.
Yeah.
So he wrote Prabhupada, and he said, Srila Prabhupada, there's just so much to do with this press. And I don't know if he had any help, maybe one other devotee helping. That I don't have time to like do it with, you know, attend the whole morning program and everything like that, you know. So what should I do?
Right.
So I said, okay. So because, you know, books were so much priority, for regular principles, 16 rounds, and I don't know how long he said, but Harinam every day. He did the Harinam every day. That's your program. And the rest of the time, of course, eating, doing what you have to do. And that way, you know, but it was interesting that he made those a priority.
Yeah.
You know, and that, of course, you know, for all of us who had normally, this is the whole morning program, that including the classes, you know, so important. But he made that, and he showed what is really the essential foundation of everything, is the chanting, both the japa and he, you know, said Harinam. I don't know, an hour a day at least, you know. When I joined, it was like 3 hours a day. I just am so fortunate I joined that early when that was the standard. Everyone was going out 3 hours a day. And it was, you know, the evening program, everyone would gather, you know, and Kiba Jayo, Jayo. It was, if I had joined somewhere else, I don't know if I would have made it, but it was very enlivening, all the chanting, and, you know, it just became very enlivened in all your services from that.
Thank you for your beautiful memories of Prabhupada's early days in the United States. Actually, yeah, one of the biggest crimes in Krishna consciousness is not to share it with others. So Harinam is very important. Spreading the holy name was so important to Prabhupada. And, you know, it's the only way that we can save, you know, so many people on that kind of scale. So it's something that, yeah, it really should be valued. All glories to the Harinam. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for a wonderful class, Vrindavana Natabara Prabhu. Thank you for visiting from LA and giving us a nice talk. There's 2 things I thought were interesting about this. In the last verse you just read, they give a name for this vow. I was asking yesterday about the vow. So they're calling it Pumsavana.
Yes.
So it's nice that it has a name. So I was looking at where else that's used, and there's one other time it shows it was used in the 9th canto, and it's defined there as which was to cause the birth of a child. So that's kind of cool. This Pumsavana vow is a vow which is to cause the birth of a child. So that gave me some kind of more information about what I was asking. For the verse we have today on the board, there's an interesting line in the purport. I was wondering maybe what you think of it. It's the second, there's 2 sentences, so it's the second sentence. It says, therefore the husband, through his representative, indirectly remains within the womb of his pregnant wife. You think that's what they're calling the child, through his representative?
Yes.
That's interesting. I've never really thought of it, heard that before. The child.
Describes it in the purport.
representative. Well, that's what this is, the purport, yeah. Therefore, the husband, through his representative, indirectly remains. So it's weird. I mean, I think we kind of have this idea that it's like when the child's in the woman's body, I think we kind of inform, oh, it's kind of hers, you know, it's like her choice. But this is my representative indirectly in you. It's just an interesting way to look at pregnancy from this kind of perspective.
Well, anyways, marriage is a partnership, and any, you know, child begotten from a marriage is the result of two people, you know. So it's, anyways, just reinforces what a big decision it is to have a child, and you know how both partners must be very thoughtful about making that decision. Okay, Govardhan Prabhu.
Krishna, thank you. I like what you said, how in the morning you bathe and then you come down and start chanting. And it's a declaration that this is important to me. My sadhana and my japa. And my spiritual master, he's here chanting like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember I was trying to speak to him about what I thought was important. And he immediately chastised me. He said, I have the right to spiritual life, you know. He said, well, I'm chanting japa, please don't interrupt me. And I was like, yes, Maharaj, like that. And he just kept chanting. Because throughout the day, he's so busy, you know. So the time when he's here, he just expects peace, you know, to chant his japa.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. All glories to your spiritual master and you for providing a good example for myself and others to make our sadhana a priority. Thank you very much. All right, seeing no other discussion, we can end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.